John Gill. Revelation chapter 6, verse 11. Scripture, quote, "And white robes were given to every one of them," unquote. John Gill, quote, "The Alexandrian copy and some others read in the singular number, quote, a white robe," unquote. And so does the Syriac version, as a token of their innocency, that they did not suffer or were slain for any capital crime or immorality they were guilty of, and of their purity and perfection they now enjoyed, as also of that spiritual delight and pleasure which was unspeakable and full of glory they now had in the presence of God and Christ, and in short, of that happiness and glory which souls in a separate state before the resurrection mourn, are partakers of, who besides the righteousness of Christ, comparable to fine linen, clean and white, walk with Christ in white, in the shining robes of bliss and glory, unquote. Scripture, quote, "And it was said unto them that they should rest," unquote. John Gill, quote, "or have rest, eternal rest from all their toil and labor, from all their sorrows and sufferings of every kind, which rest remains for the people of God, and into which these were now entered, or that they should cease from expostulating and inquiring after the above manner, and rest satisfied and contented, exercising the graces of faith, hope, and patience, believing, looking, and waiting," unquote. Scripture, quote, "Yet for a little season," unquote. John Gill, quote, "either until the end of this persecution by Diocletian, which vengeance would be taken on the Roman Empire, and it would be no more as pagan, or until the day of judgment, when full vengeance will be inflicted on the persecutors of the saints, and which is but a little while with God, with whom 1,000 years is as one day, and in comparison of that eternity of blessedness, glorified saints are partakers of," unquote. Scripture, quote, "And to their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled," unquote. John Gill, quote, "meaning either the rest of the saints that should suffer martyrdom in thee, following part of this persecution, or those who should suffer under the Adrian persecution when the emperor would become Christian, or under Rome papal, or in all the persecutions of the apostasy, unto the end of that state. These are called fellow servants and brethren of the saints in heaven, for they all worship and serve the same God, and belong to the same family in heaven and in earth, and the self-same reason that is made use of to animate the saints below to courage, faith, and patience in suffering. See 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 9. Reading from the King James Bible, quote, "Whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world," unquote, is used to keep the expectation of the saints in heaven of that vengeance that will be executed on their enemies, and to point out the time when it will be. And it may be observed that the number of martyrs, or of those that shall suffer and die in the cause of Christ and for his gospel, is fixed and determined by God, and that number should be perfected and completed. And when that is done, he will pour out all his wrath on them that have persecuted them, and put them to death. And so the Arabic version renders it, quote, "that the number of their companions and brethren, and those who are to be killed, as they have been killed, is fulfilled," unquote. In the Apocrypha, it is written, in 2 Ezra 2, verse 39, quote, "which are departed from the shadow of the world, and have received glorious garments of the Lord. Take thy number, O Sion, and shut up those of thine that are clothed in white, which have fulfilled the law of the Lord. The number of thy children whom thou longest for is fulfilled. Beseech the power of the Lord, that thy people, which have been called from the beginning, may be hallowed. Unquote. Now, though this seal does not introduce any judgment to be executed on the Roman Empire, as the others do, yet since it introduced all the martyrs with one united voice recording vengeance on their blood, it may very well be considered as a step towards and as making way for the utter ruin of that empire, in which the next seal being opened brings on, and is a full answer to the cry of these souls. Unquote. End of John Gill's Revelations chapter 6, verse 11.